Hey dancers, Jess here. I am thrilled today to be connecting with Maria Caruso, who has such a depth and wealth of knowledge to share on dancer wellness, and it's so interconnected into all of her work that I'm really thrilled to connect her with you so that you guys can hear a little bit about her journey and what has brought her to the work she's doing today. Thanks for joining me today, Maria.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
So I always like to start by hearing about sort of like highlights in your dance journey, but also if you want to share anything that was just like pivotal moments or big moments that you remember, anything like that.
My journey has certainly been unique and is pretty broad in the facets for which dance is a part of my life. I always tell everybody that when I was a young dancer in high school, I was like, I'm never going to own a dance school. I'm never going to be a choreographer. I would never be a teacher. Never say never, because those are all the things that I have become immensely passionate about. I began my journey in dance just simply because dance was a safe place for me. My parents were going through their third divorce to each other, and that was really difficult. And I needed like a safe place to land, and dance was that place. And at that time, when I was 12, I really began studying dance really seriously. Before that, it was really just recreational, but I was just very inspired as a mover. I felt like I could really fully express myself in this space. And from age 12 to like 16, my dance education had really escalated. I went from not being that great of a dancer, in all honesty, great jazz hands, and I had some amazing permed hair with some great blue eyeshadow in a photo that I keep in my office. That was like where I started, and then I landed in pink tights, black leotard with a bun. So it was like in like a
Yeah.
12-month time period, that shift had kind of happened, and I wanted to study more seriously. But as I was studying more seriously, the more summer intensives I went to, the more programs, the older dancers that I interfaced, I really began to see the darker side of dance, in that I know that within myself, I was hurting still from things that were going on in my personal life, and knew I was using dance like from a therapeutic perspective. It just made me feel good. But at the same time, my body was changing, and I just started noticing things, habits of older dancers. And if I look back at that time period, even like my teachers, a cigarette, a Diet Coke, and a container of berries was like a meal. And, I think I just gravitated to conforming to that. I also, when I was 16, I had some male dance teachers that talked to my parents about getting a breast reduction. And that was like the beginning of like, we need a body transformation here for you to be successful in dance. And my parents were like, absolutely not. That's one thing, is that they didn't align together. They aligned on one thing, is that my child is not changing their body to conform to any art form. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's about the technique and about what you're producing on stage. It's not about changing your body. And, at 103 pounds is what I was. That's when that conversation happened. And granted, I,
Mm.
was a CD cup. So I was busty, but I was still a tiny, tiny little thing. So I went to university. I started college at 15. I graduated with my undergrad at Florida State University when I was 19. I started, my dance journey, the positive side of it, when I was 18 at Dance Theater of Harlem, where I finally realized, wow, like you can have a body and it's okay.
Mm.
And that was like a very eye-opening moment for me. I felt at home. And I was also supported by several of my female professors at Florida State who really were understanding what I was combating. And they understood that my eating habits were horrible. That's when my eating disorder was probably at its worst. I was bulimic. I was anorexic first, bulimic. And they realized the gravity of the situation when I came to them and said, before I went to Dance Theater of Harlem, I said, I think I need to have the breast reduction. So now I'm 18 and I'm like, I'm going to go and have a consult. And they were like, no, you shouldn't do that. So at first it was my parents, then it was my professors, and they said, you will find your way one day. And, I finished my degree and I went to New York City, started teaching, and I decided, I'm going to try to choreograph some works. And I decided that, I want to create a company that is about body diversity and it's about health and wellness. And I'm tired of looking at my bloodshot eyes and my cut up hands in a toilet, like in the reflection, not in the mirror of a dance studio, but in the reflection of the water in a toilet bowl. And I was like, I am going to kill myself. That's how bad it was. And I said, there's got to be a better way. And if nobody else is going to do this, I guess I'm going to do it, because otherwise I'm not going to survive. And that's how Bodiography was born. And I started in New York City. I had 13 dancers that were all grads from NYU and Juilliard, and I did not know what I was doing. We were like touring all over the place. My choreography was not good. It was a safe space for dancers to express themselves. Majority of them dancers with really beautiful athletic bodies that just kind of were having the same problem that I was. Like, you're a fabulous dancer, but you're not fitting into the core, or like, you would be amazing in Swan Lake, but the bodice isn't going to fit you, you know? And I was like, this is ridiculous. So, you know, the mantra became, it's about the aesthetic of the technique and not the aesthetic of the body. Bodiography evolved into not just a dance company, but a brand. And I think that we're unique. And I'm really proud of the fact that over the past 20 years, you know, it's evolved into a dance conservatory here in Pittsburgh, a dance company that is globally recognized. My career as a solo artist, I realized I put my vulnerability and my story out there as a brand representative and as ambassador of my brand. So I took my personal story and put it on stage in a show called Metamorphosis. And that went from off Broadway to a global tour to the West End. And now you can see it on Broadway on demand. There are other facets of the brand that are so important to me, like our fitness and wellness division, where I have a fitness program. I have a wellness division where we partner with the hospital system for dance injury prevention. I created a movement therapy system, how to use a choreographic algorithm for health and healing. And you know, a connection to a university where I'm a professor. So I kind of feel like I wear all these hats, but they all come together in this central focus of thinking about dance in any genre from a very holistic place. The dancer is so sacred. I look at my dancers and like they are the precious paint that go on my canvas. And if I don't encourage them to achieve personal greatness and to achieve that within themselves as a director, as a choreographer, if I don't do that, then I don't feel like my art is worth anything.
That's amazing.
Sorry, that was kind of a lot, but that's me, and that's my
No, I loved it. The fact that you started Bodiography 20 years ago is, I mean, gosh, I started the whole dancer in 2015 and felt like I was shouting into a void, like talking about things and balance and self-care, like things that have never been uttered in the dance world. And to think that you started a company with those kinds of goals and pillars 20 years ago, like you were really blazing trails.
It's so funny because back in the day, I thought people looked at me like I had like what? This is so back in the day. Like I like date myself here. Like I I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, God, I remember when email came out. Technology has evolved. So much has evolved, but nothing has evolved at the same time in the dance world, in my opinion. You know, it is still a problem. I just feel like I made a small dent. And part of the time, you know, to be honest, as someone who has achieved so much, I look at arts from a sustainability perspective, even as a businesswoman, as an entrepreneur, because I then, after I couldn't figure out how to run my business, actually, I didn't mention this, but I went back to school when I finished my master's degree before I was 20, I think I was 23, but I have a master's degree in professional leadership and management for nonprofits. So I very much look at the arts and what we do from a business perspective and from a sustainability perspective. And we're still not a truly fully healthy community. And so it saddens me sometimes to think that we haven't evolved as much as I would have liked us to have. But I'm also recognizing now through technology and through this network that we have created, this online even network, just like yourself, like I love what you do. You are necessary in our arts ecosystem. It's about how do we connect to one another more broadly so that we can share resources, because this has been an issue for dancers for ages. This is not something new. And to be honest, I know it's still an issue for the dancers I see every day. And you know, when we first started talking, you know, I am proud to be an oasis, to be a safe place, to be leading with light, but it doesn't necessarily mean that just everybody's going to be healed, because everybody is different. And Bodiography is dance for everybody and everybody. And just like you know, we have to look at every single individual as someone different. And I think that that's traditionally why dance, you know, has become so difficult in the traditional sense, because even if you look at classical ballet and you look at like the form, ethereal, conceptually, like how we looked at like ballet, we're not talking about a humanistic story that's about Barbara and her journey, right? That's contemporary dance in some ways, but that's not Swan Lake. right? And in Swan Lake, aesthetically, and I also am a big believer, if God gave you the body and you can do it, God bless you. Yes,
Yeah,
go for it, right? And
right.
if you are healthy in doing it, God bless you. I fully support all forms of dance, all dance companies. But what I do not support is diminishing the physical, soulful self of a precious human to conform to something that is unhealthy, unrealistic, and not supportive of shedding light through art into our world. And that is that does happen. And I think that we're working to combat that. But, we are in an art form where we look in the mirror every day. I mean, how can you not look in the mirror and drum up some emotion that has nothing to do with dance, but be reflective upon your own personal journey? And that evokes emotion. And sometimes that evokes anxiety and fear and all these things that then translate into self doubt and not feeling good about looking at what you're looking at. And then that translates into disordered eating or dysmorphia in some way. And so I think a lot of people find my way of working odd because this was an interesting story. I worked with the dancers from Graham too, and I worked with the company artists from Sesi Negro in Brazil and company in Italy. And so all these dancers that I've worked with, like I come in the room and they're like, who are you? Because like my first thing I want to do is like, I want to sit down. I want to talk. I want
Yeah,
to know about you. I want to know who you are. And
yeah,
not that anybody else's processes are wrong, but they're used to a more traditional setting where it's like we come in, we do our work. And I feel like my work is only done once I know what I'm working with. And I am in a unique place as a creator, as a choreographer. I do not traditionally do any works that are fantastical in any way. Like my work is rooted in humanity and dance. So,
yeah.
naturally the topics that I tackle and that I'm passionate about are certainly more about the human experience. So it lends itself to a different processes anyways. I'm not reconstructing a masterwork, which would require a different process. So again, I'm not diminishing any of those processes. It's just simply that it's different. It's just outside the box and there's room for it. And I think I've demonstrated that over 20 years. And I remain hopeful that more and more directors and educators in the dance ecosystem think heartily about our responsibility to carry forward our craft, which is troubled right now post pandemic. Like, I think all of the arts really are struggling.
Yeah.
It's been a difficult time. We're performers, right? So, when isolation happens and there are no shows going on and we're stuck as movers in these like tiny
Yeah.
little spaces, it causes a little bit of chaos within self, within the larger environment. And we have a lot of healing to do. And I'm very hopeful that because we as a global society have all experienced this together, that togetherness will draw attention to what we experienced and the necessity to carry forward in a more holistic way. Because I think that even if you didn't understand, I think everybody, no matter where you came from and what walk of life as a dancer, I think that you have a newfound understanding of what your experience is within those confines of isolation. And I think that a lot of people have softened in their hearts and have a little bit more compassion and understanding for others. And I remain hopeful that we will come out of this in a very positive way. We'll use our resources, like someone like yourself, that we can self-identify when we're having some struggles and we can get the help that we need instead of putting it in what my husband calls it, the black box. And that was something I learned from him when he was talking about going to boarding school. He was like, a boarding school, as a child at boarding school, you just put the emotions in a black box and just put them away.
Mm.
And I'm like, no, let's excavate, let's unearth, let's let the black box, let's open the black box and let's look at everything and process everything.
I mean, I think that black box idea is very relevant in dance because I think even people who have remained in the dance world, they have many of them put their own traumas or challenges from dance into a box and have left them there and have not processed them. And that is where this continued abuse
Mhm.
can come from. I do think people have to think differently about what they're doing in the studio. And it's interesting. And I wonder for you too, because, like I said, I've been doing this work for like almost 8 years. So I've been thinking about these things a
Mhm.
lot for like 8 years. And I just started teaching dance in September. So it like brings me into a different space of understanding around like where teachers' mentalities are and things like that. And I worry that a lot of teachers haven't done much thinking about these things. Like, unless it comes up in front of them, like, this kid is having a mental health crisis, and then maybe they have to think about it. Some have, but I think that has to be so intentional. Like, you have to like say to yourself, I have to think about what my experience in dance was, what was good about it, what was bad about it, what should change.
It goes back to, I think, a little bit, and I agree with you. I don't know that it has changed for everybody, but
Yeah,
I know that is a challenge because I think a lot of times I gotta say the old school mentality, which is not one that I have adopted. Granted, I believe in hard work in the studio. Don't get me wrong.
right.
Like, that's not what I'm saying, but I also believe that it's a dialogue, it's a conversation, and I think that that's the difference. If I look at like dance, old school dance, in the traditional sense, it's a discussion. It's like I'm telling you what to do. You get like there's no, we're not having a conversation about it. I don't need to know what's going on in your world. Leave the baggage at the door, like
Right.
the old school thing. I also feel like now working with younger dancers, we have to create some boundary lines because,
Yeah.
every class can't be disrupted by
Right.
the whole leave your baggage at the door. And so I think it's really just about teaching. It's about reinventing the way we look at dance in the classroom. And,
Yeah.
I do encourage all teachers to think about how do you reinvent? We have to reinvent. It's a different time. Change is inevitable and change brings about chaos, and chaos may be difficult to navigate. I thrive in chaos, so I love it. It is also, and I say this, it's learning one my father-in-law used to teach the 5 L's of leadership. He went to Harvard Business School, and the fifth L of leadership is to know when to leave. And that is the hardest thing for anybody to do, but that is, I think, the hardest thing in the dance ecosystem, is that when do you understand and really come to terms within yourself as an educator that it is time to pass on the torch, or it is time to leave the past and the way that you taught, or the way that you handled your classroom, your cohort, and how do you evolve that? And
Mhm.
for me, I took a very big leap. I have a show in 2 weeks, and it was time. I needed to step down as the artistic director of my company. I founded the company,
Yeah.
but it was just time because, if I don't give it wings, it's not going to be sustainable. And so, probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire career, but necessity for the future, because the company needs a fresh leader, like someone new that's going to take that legacy and build upon it. And I'm 42 years old saying that. So I do think the challenge within the culture of dance at times is that we do sometimes have dancers who are unwilling to let go of that past and believe that that past should be lived today, and
Right.
not recognizing that today is different, and especially post pandemic. And I have a friend, and she's a nun. She's one of my best friends, Sister Rita. I love my Sister Rita. And she was asking this question, is God evolving? Right?
Mm.
And like it's such a fascinating thing to think about. Clearly, so much in our world is evolving. How students understand like technology, the thing I see in the classroom, different than what I did in the past, is that my younger students, my high school students, have these unrealistic expectations because that's what they're trained to do. They are trained to digest a ton of content, and then they have no idea what to do with it. And so imagine how that translates into a dance studio. And I feel like half the time I'm saying, breathe. Like,
Mm.
please, if you think you're mad at yourself because you're not getting a triple turn, that's insanity. Like, this is a studio-based art form. This takes time. And if you feel like that just because your thumbs move like this, like my thumbs just do not move like this. I'm a voice person because I can't keep up. I can't keep up with these people that are like running through, the young people are like running through life. And it's just everything is so instant, like instant.
Yeah.
We instantly want all this stuff to happen. And I'm sorry, dance is old school. It is not instant. It takes years. Like, I'm 42 years old and I am at the height of my career. What
Yeah.
I accomplished as a solo performer, I was 41 when it happened. It took that long to get to that place. And granted, there are people out there and dancers that are achieving at like 16. God bless them. I think that's
Right.
but that's not everybody. And I think that as dancers, we need to look inward. We need to have realistic expectations. We need to be tender towards ourselves. We need to understand our value, the beauty of who we are. And I teach my students, you got to live a life, at least this is what I think: grace, gratitude, and love. And then on top of that, if you look at it from a dance perspective, it's artistry and technique and athleticism. Right.
Mhm.
But they're pillars, right? And they're like this tripod. And then when we build and build and build and build. But if you don't take care of yourself first, you're no good in a core and in a show. Like, you're not going to be good on
Right.
stage if you're not taking care of yourself. So your main responsibility is to self. And I do, again, feel like we still have a long way to go to understand that we have an evolving studio classroom, where we can, as teachers, be encouraging of how we approach things, how we approach students, how we correct. It is a hard space to be, as an educator, because you are preserving the historical content, the context of the work, right? So, sometimes I'm like, okay, like, don't get mad at me because you're doing fondues at 90 degrees. Like, I didn't even invent them. Like, I'm just observing them. I'm just telling you, like, I know that they're not the best. Like, I know that we don't want to do them this slow. I mean, I get it. Like, I understand your frustration. Like, but I'm sorry. Like,
Some
if
things are necessary.
some things necessary, right? And we can't escape them. So it is a tough balance of like
Yeah.
trying to participate in this very challenging full body experience, emotional experience as an artist, as a dancer. It's just hard, right? And
Yeah.
you got to preserve, I don't care who you are, even as an inventor of a new technique, because I feel like, anyways, I've invented new things, but like, they don't come without the foundation and knowledge of a form that came before me, right?
Yeah.
First position is not healthy for anybody, I'm like,
Right.
let's be honest. If you're kinesthetically aware, you understand that, like, not everybody can do that and it be comfortable. Now,
Right.
there are plenty of people out there that can. And that's not to say that you can't be within the technique in a healthy way. It's also, for me, we teach dance as a language at Bodiography. And I really love that because I think our younger students really embody, like, what does the word mean in French? And like, what is the translation? And how does that pertain to like what you're doing? And granted, if you walked into a Bodiography classroom at like level 2, our kids are not like 180, like we're not forcing a lot of that because we're just
Yeah.
getting them to understand, what does retiré mean? Retiré means withdrawn, right? It's different than a passe, right? But
Yeah.
traditionally we just say passe, right? But
Right.
withdrawn, you understand the difference between that and passing down. Like, your brain connects with the movement in a very different way. And the more you understand that, and then the more you understand the body, the more you understand how you use your body, what you
Yeah.
put into your body, the evidence of that work will be profound a little bit further in the process. So not immediately. And I'm okay with that because I'd rather it be a more holistic journey than it be, trying to force a body, anybody, young, whatever age, to try to be in a space that doesn't feel good. So
Yeah.
and I think that's the other origin of, like, the classical technique and bodies trying to confine, like, even children, trying to get into these shapes and spaces where they don't feel good. And they're just like, what is this? And then you're like
Yeah.
a leotard looking in the mirror doing like, what is this? I'm like, why am I here? Like, this doesn't feel good on my body. Like, mom, like, I don't get it. So,
So true.
we try a very different approach where it's just like, let's understand like where this technique came from and why we're doing
Yeah.
it. And yes, these are the things that we want to achieve long term, but we're not going to push our body to do that because it's not super healthy. We will get there over time as we continue to work those muscles and those muscles start to understand that. And then it just kind of evolves from there.
I mean, you're speaking my language. The fact that you've been doing this work for 20 years is so inspiring. And I think that more dancers and artistic directors need to think about and create spaces that are safe and supportive and holistic. And it is a matter of, in a lot of spaces, like having conversation and being more collaborative,
Mhm.
because definitely, I was saying earlier this morning that so much of the dance experience is being told what to do, go to your place, get in line, be quiet. And we're trained that way. And then when we become professionals, we have no voice because we have never learned how to use it. We've never been encouraged to use it. So I'm just happy that you're creating a space where that's a part of it.
And I think also we're trying to educate we have a college preparatory division. We do teach advocacy. And also we try to teach the students that like, you do have a voice. It's your job
Yes.
to come to us at the
Yes.
beginning, but you are also, it's your job to do it in a polite way. And there's still etiquette in
Yes.
dialogue. And to be honest, I think that that's what the challenge is, this digital world, this world we live in, this technology driven world, we're used to texting. We're not used to having a conversation. And
Yes.
I'm trying to be encouraging of like, I remember when it was a couple years ago, this is where I'm a little old fashioned, right? When we would be on tour as a company, I would be like, no cell phones at the table. I'm like, these are
Oh, I love
professional
it.
artists. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. And I'm like, I am taking you out for a meal and we are eating as a family. This is
I
what
love
we
it.
do, right? And there are no cell phones. And everyone's like, what? And I'm like, no, this is how we do this. And it's the same thing in rehearsal. Like, we don't use
Yes.
cell phones. Like, the same thing with students. Like, if you have an issue, we're not going to text. We're going
Yes.
to have a conversation. And I find myself educating humans just about
Yes.
natural interfaces. And
Yep.
I think that is also part of the world we live in, that we are combating a really very common way of communicating with other people. But advocacy is important, and protection of your body and feeling good in your space can be done in an elegant way as long as you're
Yes.
able to communicate effectively. I think that's where we are a bit challenged. Like you said, like, we are taught all these things. And also that's the other thing at 20 years, I am very proud of our progress within the system that, the people that I have interfaced with from a global perspective. But I also do understand that sometimes I think some people are afraid of like, oh,
Yes.
there comes Caruso, Bodiography. She's ready. She's like kind of scary. She's like, she's got something to say. She's outside the box and she's going to
Yeah.
tell you what she thinks. And I feel like in 20 years, I've gained the confidence enough to do that, to find an elegant way to put out there what my thoughts are on how things are handled in different spaces and places, and to be encouraging about simply just thinking about something new. Just try something new.
Yes. Yes.
That's, I think, what just generally needs to happen. And, dance is a relationship. And what I loved about learning about you and thinking about like every different person has even a different relationship with food. Someone who who lived with an eating disorder for so long, that has had a lot of damage to their body, and a lot of health issues and things like that. In my 30s, it's been a really rough road, and I would never want anybody to go through it again. But I think it's very important to also be educating students about, the fact that we are athletes. And it's also about how you hear things, right? And I've been
Yes.
teaching a lot now, even with the younger kids. Like when I say bring your belly button into your spine, I'm not telling you that you have a belly, or I'm not implying that there's any problem with your body. I'm
Right.
just simply telling you that we need to engage those muscles, right? And I
Yes.
feel like I have to continue to also be echoing that, because I'm like, hey, I've sat down with my company artists, like had a pause. Like I can sense that you're getting like upset or frustrated. And I'm not telling you that you need to change your body. I'm just telling you that you need to use your body in a different way. You need to engage those muscles. But I sense that what you're hearing is, I think you're fat.
Yes.
And that's not what I'm saying. And so I feel like I've had to take a lot of time. And I think it's important to take that time to reinsure, or to ensure that you're communicating effectively, and that your dancer as a student or as a professional is being heard. And the reinforcement of what you're saying is there, and the positivity around it, and the encouragement to have an equally balanced relationship with the fuel that you put in your body, with the relationship. It's just like a relationship with your partner, or your
Right.
dance partner, your life partner, your family, the people you love. That's what I encourage people to think about, is like, think about the relationship with your best friend. It's good.
Mhm.
You do fight, right? It's a constant, like it's got constant energy. And that same thing happens with food. And I say this to my company all the time, because I had a lot of health issues, and I had taken a drug that caused me to go into complete gastroparesis. And so, people used to say, why aren't you eating? Like, why aren't, like, you have to do this and this and this. And I'm like, well, I'm trying to do those things, but it's not working for me. And we found out
Yeah.
I had gastroparesis, but it takes me 19 hours to empty my stomach. That's very long and that's very odd,
Yeah.
so it made sense why I couldn't eat at in the morning before I danced and why it made me sick,
Yeah.
because my body is just different. So I have to eat for my body and just not succumb to any peer pressure to do anything
Right.
different. And I reinforce this with my company. Guys, you don't have to eat like I eat. And if I tell you that like chicken salads, which I tease everybody because that's like what I eat all the time, like before a show, like you don't have to eat a chicken salad. Like, if it doesn't, like you got to eat and feel your body with what works for you, and you're all different. So like you need to be mindful of that. So what works for me is not going to work for you. But you have to find some balance in that relationship so that you feel good in the skin that you're in, and that you feel equally as good in that relationship as you do in the relationship that you have in the studio. So if you like this space and you feel like it's safe, then you need to do some extra legwork to figure out like what you need to do on your own in that relationship.
Yeah.
And if it's troubled and you haven't found the solution, then you need to call Jess.
Well, yes, thank you.
That's exactly the thing. Like, if that is a challenge for you, which I think is a challenge for many dancers, but I very much appreciate and value what you do. I think that it's so necessary. And I also like what we were talking about maybe before we kind of started this chat, was that, your clients and the people that you interface with are engaging in multiple resources. So you're not just the only resource. We are complex beings, and it takes a village. It takes a village. And especially for a dancer, we're even more complex than I think the average person, because I mean, let's face it, like, we spend our lives contorted into like weird positions, half naked in front of a mirror. And like the normal person like goes to work in an office, like it's just different. You're giving your whole self. You're giving your whole self to a community of people. That's just so precious. It's kind of wild. And this is what I say to my students when they like get all upset sometimes. Cause I'm like, I always say in the middle of bar, I'm like, if we have to cry, just get it all out. So, someone will be sitting there like, this is the total bodyography world. Like where you'll see a student like just melt down and cry. And I feel like I have to do that because I remember wanting to cry. And I was like, oh my God, don't tell anybody you're weak. Like you'll be thought of as weak.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not thought of as weak. How can you not be expressive when you're using this whole instrument? It's just, it's a powerful thing. So like, let yourself express it. And then I also remind my students sometimes, and I'm like, guys, you're looking at me with like such intensity, like you're upset. Let's be mindful. Like I did not show up at your doorstep with a van and like, I did not kidnap you, put you into the dance van and then take you to the studio. Like you came here on your own accord. Right. And so like, you need to understand that what you're giving back to me, I'm sensing a lot of emotion. So we either need to talk about, like, let's talk about it. Like, what are we struggling with? How do we work through that within the classroom? Because right now it's like, you're giving me a lot of intensity and and I'm not taking it personally because as an educator, it's my job to understand what's happening. But like, let's just chat about it. Like, what's going on?
I love it. Maria, I feel like we could chat all day.
Yes. I'm sorry. Like taking
that's okay. I want to know so that dancers who are watching can find you and can check out what you're doing. Where is the best place to do that?
So I am unbelievably accessible. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. The best way, and I'm putting this out there, I am available via email all the time. So anybody and everybody can feel free to reach out. I'm Maria@bodiography.com. If you want to learn a little bit more about my story, which is like metamorphosis, you could just Google it. It's on Broadway on demand, but it is my life story told in the form of dance. And it was beautifully filmed in a very unique way with hidden cameras in the West End of London at the Lyric Theatre. I'm really proud of the piece. But if you are a dancer and anything today resonated with you, I strongly encourage you. It's $3.99 to rent it for 2 days. I strongly encourage you to watch it. You probably see a lot of yourself in it. And if you need anything, guidance, support, that's what I'm here for. So feel free to email me and check out also what Bodiography is doing. That's my company, bodiography.com. You can kind of check us out and see where we are in the world when we're performing and hopefully maybe check out a show.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. You were awesome. I really appreciate all of this.
Do you have company auditions or anything coming up?
We're a very unique company for audition. Basically what we do is we require everyone to come to the summer intensive program. I look at everyone's reel And also we have a new artistic director. So now it's like we work in tandem because I'm
Yeah.
still the founding director. So we look at everybody's film reel. We invite people if you want to come in to take class. We're very open to that,
Yeah.
but we do require the 6-week intensive because we want you to get to know us. And it's about like, are we jiving? Is that relationship like,
Right.
is that all happening? Because the other thing that's unique about Bodiography is that all of the artists in the company are very focused on health and wellness and that initiative, and also are educators. So we are a
Amazing.
company that does require a passion for teaching as well,
Cool.
because they're not just dancing. They are also teachers at our conservatory. They're on faculty at the conservatory and also teach more broadly in the community. So I always like to
Cool.
preface that because sometimes teaching is not like
Yeah.
everyone is passionate about, but we are a dance company where we do require both.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Maria.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day, and let's definitely stay in touch, okay?
Well, you
Yeah.
keep doing you. I think you're amazing.
Thank
I'm
you.
so
You
excited about this
too.
opportunity to share you in this conversation, because I think the more we
Yeah.
put the conversations out there, I think it's important, and
Agreed.
it's how we're gonna make some change.
Yes,
So
definitely.
thank you so much.
All right,
Have an awesome
Maria.
day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. You
All right, take
too.
care.
Bye.
Bye.